Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. We're jumping back in. I know it's been a very long time, but we are now on part 3, Grown-Ups. Chapter 10 is one of the best chapters. I love the fortune cookie part. I don't know, it just is something that really intrigued me the first time I read it, and ever since I always look forward to this part. So finally all of the grown-ups, minus Stan, meet at this Chinese restaurant, and they are having a lovely reunion, and everyone just kind of falls back into their natural patterns. They're like kids, but older versions of themselves, and it's just a very comfortable chapter. Everyone, well, I don't know about everyone, but most of them were very nervous about meeting each other again, worried about changes and all that stuff. And we get some interesting recaps about people's lives. Beverly, she lies about her husband. She says that he's an amazing man, kind, all this stuff that is just not true. And it's sad, but I'm sure we all know about things like that. And, you know, no one wants to say I failed at marriage, I married a shitheel, and my life is not very happy. Ben talks about the story of how he lost all of the weight because he was quite overweight as a child. He got bullied by a coach, I think in high school or college. He got bullied by a coach. He kind of used that as like I'm gonna show this guy, and he lost all of his weight. They talk about Stan's suicide, of course, and it still is something that I wish we could have seen, was Stan interacting with these people, but you know, it's not the way it is. Mike kind of decides, okay, now we have to, you know, we're all reunited, we need to start talking about the business at hand. And he talks about the cycles of its career, and he mentions that there are things that led him to call everyone together, because at first he didn't want to get anyone there and have it be a false alarm. He wanted to wait until he was sure. One of the things that convinced him that this was necessary was a dead body had been found, and next to the dead body was the school photo of Georgie, the one that went missing, the one that Richie and Bill were trying to look at after Bill told everyone that this photo winked at him, and it ended up years and years later next to a dead kid. So that is very suspect. So they've noticed similarities about the success that everyone has had except for Mike, who remained in Derry, and the fact that all of them are childless. And they kind of decide that they are going to go on a nostalgia tour and kind of get things going, because as of right now, no one remembers everything. Mike doesn't want to just drop it on everyone. He wants them to kind of naturally acclimate and remember of their own accord. He doesn't want to overload the circuits. He wants everyone to kind of gradually get back into the memories and what had happened, and hopefully it would prevent a Stan type situation. They all agree, they all decided that, you know, it began alone for all of them, and then they found each other. So that's how it has to go this time. You know, they're gonna all take a nostalgia tour of Derry, and they are gonna meet back and kind of discuss their findings. So the fortune cookies come, and I love this part. It says, no one bites into them. Quote, that would have been the normal thing to do, but no one did it, page 504. And I find that really weird. I've never bitten into a fortune cookie. I've always broken it, taken the fortune out, read it, and then, you know, eaten the pieces. It's weird to me that the assumption is that everyone bites into a fortune cookie. Let me know below if you do that. Beverly gets just like a spurt of blood in hers. Richie has an eye looking at him, and the thing with Richie in the eye is that once he is returned to Derry, his eyes start stinging and hurting because he used to wear glasses, now he wears contact lenses, so it's some kind of a, he needs to have his glasses because that's what he wore as a kid, and that is important to his childhood identity. Ben has teeth inside of his, like gross, rotted, icky, dried out teeth. Eddie has a bug, a creepy bug, and Bill has a pulsating cookie that eventually hatches a fly. Now, Mike doesn't have anything. I've never been able to figure out what is in Mike's fortune cookie. So that is the end of their meal, and the hostess comes in and she's like, is everything okay? And everyone's trying to pretend like everything is okay when there's all this disgusting stuff on their table, but they're the only ones who can see it. Ben ends up going to the library because that is the place that he felt the heaviest and the safest. And Pennywise appears. Quote, "You're too old to stop me, Ben. You're all too old. Too old to do anything but get yourselves killed." Page 519. So he's in the library and, he's having what would kind of be a hallucination to other people, and he's trying to keep it together. He asks for a library card, and as he's getting this library card, that's when the Pennywise stuff happens, and he's holding onto a book, and he takes it up there, and the librarian thinks he wants to check it out, and he is, distracted by Pennywise. He's trying to get out of there. He's trying to just, go through the motions, finish up this whole thing, and he finds out that the book that he had in his hand was one of the books that he was carrying in 1958 when Henry Bowers stomped on it, kicked it aside, ruined his library book. So it's just like a full circle thing. And he goes to the old baseball field at the Tracker Brothers Depot, and he sees dead people, mostly kids from his past. Beverly goes to her old house, kind of expecting to see her father, but when she gets up there, his name is no longer on the door, even though she initially sees it. She rings the doorbell, and the person who answers is an old woman, and she realizes, oh, I misread the name on the door, or the doorbell, and it's Mrs. Kirsch, and not Marsh. So she is kind of, flustered, and she says, oh, I thought my dad was still living here. She really didn't want to see her dad, but she kind of felt obligated to, and, had no other place to go in town, really. And Mrs. Kirsch is like, oh, come in and we'll talk. I knew your dad. Quote, "It did say Marsh under the doorbell," her mind whispered suddenly, and she was frightened. Page 543. Mrs. Kirsch changes into that, like, Hansel and Gretel witch. And the house or the apartment is made of candy, and she wants to eat Beverly. And then Mrs. Kirsch turns into her father. It's all very creepy. It's one of the creepiest ones. Richie sees Pennywise at the city center, and he remembers when he was a kid that he had seen Pennywise, he had seen it. The Paul Bunyan statue came alive and tried to kill him, but he dismissed it as a dream. So everyone else had this experience with it, and he said, I never did, because he was describing what actually happened to him as a dream. Bill visits the storm drain where Georgie was disarmed, and he meets a kid with a skateboard. He takes a walk by the Barrens. Quote, "That's where it ended before, and that's where it's going to end this time," Bill thought with a shiver. "In there, under the city." Page 571. Bill is reunited with Silver. He's on his way home. He stops in at this pawn shop place, and he takes it to Mike's place, and the two of them fix it up. And Mike had purchased a bicycle tire repair kit on a whim a couple weeks before, or maybe a couple days before. He didn't know why he was doing it, he just did it, and then Bill shows up with Silver. Kind of creepy. And we've got chapter 12, 3 uninvited guests. So I really like this because this is where things start converging. So we have Henry Bowers at the Juniper Hill facility for the criminally insane, and that's where he's gone because he admitted to all the murders. He didn't do it, but most of the murders in 1958 pointed to Henry, and he just confessed. Henry is hearing voices coming from the moon, voices of his friends, voices of the losers, things that happened in the past are, replaying in his head, and then the moon turns into Pennywise's face. Quote, "You have to go back, Henry, you have to go back and finish the job. You have to go back to Derry and kill them all." Page 588. So that night, Victor Chris, who was one of the boys in Henry's gang, he visits Henry, and they stage an escape. They kill the guard on duty, and Henry's able to escape, so he heads to Derry. Tom caught up with Bev's friend Kay. He beat her terribly, and he finally got the information he needed when he threatened to cut her face. He had broken a vase, and he said he was going to cut her with it on her face, and so she gave up Beverly's location. And so now he's heading to Derry, Maine. Kay calls Beverly. She like searches through the phone book looking for motels because she doesn't know where Beverly's staying, and she finally gets the room, or she finally gets the hotel, but Beverly's not there. So she leaves a message telling her to call her. So I don't know why you wouldn't say something about Tom. Like, hey, you don't even have to be specific exactly, you know, if she's worried about the hotel front desk knowing Beverly's business or whatever, but she probably should have mentioned that her crazy ex-husband, who just threatened to cut her up and might have killed her, is on his way to get her. I don't know. That's a little weird. And then we also have Audra, who was left behind in England shooting the movie. She decides, you know what, I'm going also. I'm going to Derry and no one can stop me. She ends up being like nose to nose in the parking lot with Tom. So their cars are parked. They're in separate places, but they share a parking lot. So the two of them are going to be happening upon each other all the time. And then we have Derry, the third interlude. We find out a little bit more about how like the Black Spot and the ironworks all played a part in ending the cycle of it. And in 1928, the thing that ended the cycle was the Bradley gang. And this is just basically like a little Western story that happened in Derry, Maine. We had 8 fugitives from the law. They were known as the Bradley gang, 2 women, the rest are men, and they were bank robbers that the entire town of Derry came out and shot dead in the street. So it was really, really graphic, really kind of bloodthirsty on the part of the townspeople. And we find out that Pennywise was there in several different guises, encouraging individuals to execute these people. So it was very, you know, orchestrated by Pennywise, and the townspeople don't like to talk about it. Mike was able to get someone to talk to him. You know, once people are older, I think they're more willing to say something because, you know, what does it matter? So Mike hears the story from Mr. Keene, he of the drugstore, the one who conned Eddie's mom into getting medicinal water, basically, for her son's asthma. So that is the third interlude. We will start with part 4, July of 1958, hopefully next week. I don't foresee another long break like this. I just got so busy and time got away from me, and I'm hoping to be back on track.